Hey guys, welcome to the Girl Take No podcast. I am your host, Shani Sanders, and we have a really good show today. So we're talking to Lindsay Wynn. She is CEO, founder of an intimate apparel brand for women called Momotaro Apotheca. And we're going to find all about this brand because it's definitely something you're going to want to know because it's all about your vaginal health. So let's get started. Lindsay, how are you?
Shani, thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to meet you and be on the podcast today.
Yes. Yeah, it's an awesome time to meet you too. And before we get into any questions, I always want to ask my guests, what's the story behind the brand? So what's the story behind Momotaro Apotheca? What made you decide to start this brand?
Oh, I hope your listeners are okay with things that are kind of spicy. Well, spicy or
we're all about spicy.
At least a little bit like TMI, right? We started this company, and I started this company specifically, and so Momotaro Apotheca makes alternatives to what people think of as feminine care products. We address bacterial vaginosis, UTIs, yeast infections, postpartum care, lichen sclerosis, symptoms of STIs, really all across the board. We're trying to create organic alternative and something that is inclusive and shame-free and talks about our bodies in ways that don't cause more harm. So yeah. The long story short is I had been working in photography for 10 years. I was kind of frustrated with my job. At the same time, I had a new partner and I was exploring getting out of New York City. And it was just time. And I was hiking, blah, 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 walking along. And I end up having, this is the spicy part, but me and my partner decide to have sex in a hot spring. Super gross. Sounds hot at the time. I was young. I highly do not recommend this. You're basically having sex in a bacterial cesspool. But I was young and I was didn't want to say no. And I knew it was probably a bad idea. And so I gave myself a yeast infection from hell. It was absolutely terrible. So being that I needed to obviously find a solution pretty quickly, I went straight to the over-the-counter and prescription medications, and they just didn't work for me. Since then, we've now figured out that these products can actually exacerbate our conditions, our symptoms. They can sometimes make them recurrent, things like that. And so that's what happened to me. I all of a sudden, my yeast infection turned into BV, that turned into UTI, that turned into a kidney infection, and back again. So I was spending, years, time, money trying to figure out why my body could not heal itself. And so myself and my partner, his background is in biology and sustainability, we're we can do this better. I turned myself into this vaginal health DIY project, which again, don't recommend. If you can, you can Google it. I have done it. And that's terrible. As a woman in the modern world, I'm I shouldn't be tying garlic to a string and shoving it up my vaginal canal to try and get rid of a yeast infection. But in turn, I was able to find a lot of really amazing clinically trialed homeopathic ingredients and remedies that started to resonate and started to make me feel better. People who have gone down this path know that there are other ways. And so we were able to create and wanted to create products that were, again, organic, plant-based. They didn't bring down, they didn't make me sick, right? Or more sick. So I ended up, that's kind of how we started. We started with one product and we've since expanded our line to 7 and we're going to keep going.
I love this conversation because one, it's important. We all have had yeast infections. I've been to the doctor to get that one big pill. That's about either that pill you take for 5 days and it's supposed to go away, but it's not the most pleasant experience while you're having it. And I've had the UTIs in terms of not being able to pee, or it hurts when I pee. And I remember the first time that happened to me and I was just what the hell is going on with this? It's painful. It's not friendly to deal with. And so it's good to know now that there's products out there that are more organic and that we have options. Totally. It's good to know that.
And studies are showing right now, in the last 10 years, we've quadrupled our doses of fluconazole that, to people, they're going to the doctors more. People are getting more yeast infections and they're becoming more resistant. So we're seeing more resistant candida to the typical treatments that we've given to people because we're over prescribing, and like, you know, you often harm the good bacteria when addressing the bad. And, you know, these things are just, they're so powerful, which is really incredible. Like, you know, we're not a company that poo-poos some of these options. Like if you have a kidney infection, you need the antibiotics, but there are other ways to address these issues before having to go that route. Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're just trying to give people, an organic, a more gentle solution. Like, you know, Monostat and like has had like virtually no competitors in the last like 30 years. Like it's time.
Really?
I mean, yeah, not really. Like it's time to kind of diversify our options. Like there's your over-the-counter like creams and your like drugstore brands, and you have Monostat and different azoles, and you have fluconazole, and there's lots of like versions of this. But in terms of like something that again is shame and stigma free, we also don't use a lot of gendered language, just because like I don't want to go to the store and buy a product that says like my like.
Yes.
You know, like my, like make your hoo-ha smell like a rose or something like that. So we're like, this is a vulval vaginal health product made of plants. Like, this is what this is. Here you go. And like, don't feel stressed about it. Like, let's just solve the issue.
Yeah. You know, what's so crazy? That is so true. Because most people will, you know, you'll hide the fact that you have a yeast infection or any type of UTI because people think, oh, you must be dirty or something, you know, so it's that shame that comes with it. So it's good to know that you can, and you're shameful just going to the aisle and picking it up and taking it to the counter. It's almost how men used to buy condoms, I guess, or women buying condoms. It's like you're ashamed of it, and we shouldn't be ashamed of it. It's our body. We should be more confident when it comes to buying those type of things. And I do like the packaging, and the look and feel of your products. Like it's soft, you know what I mean? And it's very, but yeah, it does the job. But I was like, it's attractive to look at.
Yeah, totally.
It really is.
You're like, I don't want to, I'm with you. Like the fact I was spending all this time on, like the feminine care aisle. And I'm like, oh my God, these are my options. I'm mortified. And then like on top of that, I didn't want to take them home and put them on my counter. You know, I didn't want this, like, again, something that said, like, you know, make your vajayjay, you know, not yeasty or like whatever. I mean, it's just like so interesting. Like the names that people come up with it. They're always like derivatives of like, you know, either the anatomical words or they're like a play on trying to make this part of your body that, you know, 50% of the world has, like very precious. It's like, it's just a vagina. It's just a vulva. We can say the words. It's okay. And I think that really also helps us like in the larger conversations about sex, pleasure, health, and wellness, like level the playing field, right? Like you're like, I don't want, you're able to talk to your partner, maybe your parent or your child or friends. Like I'm going through this thing and like, I need some help. Or like, I just experienced this, like, we really do want to open up the conversation in general around sexual health from pain to pleasure.
Because like I said, most people won't talk about that kind of stuff because they feel like, oh, this just belongs in the bedroom or in the home or just between me and my gynecologist. You know what I mean? They won't feel comfortable enough to have that open conversation. I mean, even myself is still getting more comfortable with the conversation, but it's an important conversation to have. And that's what will lead me to the question, like how important is, well, I should know this as well, but how important is vaginal health as a woman? Like that should be a part of your main priority.
Totally. I mean, it's super important, right? Like we have a relationship with sexuality and our sexual health, you know, I wouldn't quite say from when I was born, but like you think about going into puberty, right? And that this can happen now. I mean, this is happening to young people at like age 10. You know, that's a really young age to start to have to understand, like, okay, my body is changing. I could now carry a child. I'm going to bleed from my vagina. I need to learn what a tampon or a pad is. What do I do? Why are my boobs changing? Okay, now I'm entering into, you know, say my mid-20s or whatever. You eventually become sexually active, and you have to understand, like, okay, maybe you have sex with penises and you need to understand what it is to not get pregnant. You need to understand what it is to know what STIs are and like why all these things are important to work together. And then maybe you want to have children and you're like, okay, that's, you know, the next phase and what happens when I have a baby and when I get pregnant into my body. And after that, you know, I have so many friends right now that are going through having kids, they're having their first children and they're like, oh my God, nobody tells you what happens after you give birth. And I'm like, yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know,
yeah.
They're like, you know,
yeah, what happens?
What's an episiotomy? Like, why did I tear from my butthole to my vagina? And what do I do now? How do I go to the bathroom? Like, and then menopause and there's stigma around that and like not feeling enough. And so like, I mean, that's a long-winded answer, but like just shows you how much there really is. So understanding and being able to talk about these things is so important. And it doesn't have to be an everyday thing, but like when something does arise, we need to be able to advocate for ourselves and get the help, say from a medical professional or the support of a partner, you know, and not feel shame around it. It's okay if these conversations do feel uncomfortable. You don't have to like all of a sudden be like, okay, cool. Yeah, whatever. Like, I don't give a shit. I'm going to talk about my vagina on the internet. I mean, I didn't want to put my body on blast at first. Like, I didn't want to tell everybody. It's taken me quite a few years to get to this point to be able to like talk and share about this so openly.
Yeah. You know, it makes me think about how much sex education has changed over the years, the lack of it. I remember in school back in the day, you would have those health classes that tell you about your body. You know, parents relied on the school for kids to know about their bodies, to know about the changes of their bodies. Parents wasn't comfortable having those conversations really. And now it's like today, that's completely gone in school. You know, you can't even say certain words anymore, you know, which is so crazy. So how do you make people more comfortable with a conversation that some people are where the country seems like beginning to shy away from? How do you talk to kids about it anymore?
I know. I mean, our country is going so backwards in terms of how we're educating in so many aspects, sex, race, like I'm sure you're aware of all those pieces, and it's really sad. And, you know, I think like a way to start the conversation is to have it more passively. We talk about this in a lot of ways, even in relationships and like intimacy settings, like have the conversation before you have to have the conversation, you know, like if you can bring something up to, let's just say your child is probably maybe the first example, because sex education is so terrible in schools and oftentimes makes things worse because it's like tied into fear or religious beliefs. It ends up not being very objective, and like sexual health should be objective. And at least I don't in terms of educating on it. So it's like, you know, we do a lot of this is like provide the resources to your child ahead of time. And I know people attribute this to like grooming or whatever the like horrible words that they use, but it's like if you don't educate your child, somebody else will. Like young boys watch porn, and then all of a sudden they have this hyper masculine misogynistic views of what an intimate relationship should be. Like teach them about consent, like teach them about what a condom is before they have to try and figure out and they opt to not use it because they're like feel awkward putting it on because they don't really know how to do it. Like tell girls like, look, here's some condoms in the bathroom, in the bottom of the bathroom. Here's a tampon. This is what it is. Here's a pamphlet. Like you can read it at your own leisure. If you have questions, ask me. Like, you know, I always advocate for doing a little bit of the work ahead of time because just like in a situation where all of a sudden you find yourself with a yeast infection, you're like already have it. You're like, oh shit, now what do I do? Like, we should have a better understanding that ahead of time.
Yeah. And I think that's important too, as parents, even with, you know, my kids too, is like, you know, sometimes you're afraid to have the conversation because you don't want them to think you're consenting. You know what I mean? To say, hey, go have sex. This is what I want you to do. And here's how you do it. And here's what happens. It's more so about educating them on it. Like you said, making them aware of it, because if you don't talk to your kids about it, you're right. They're going to learn from somewhere. The boys are going to learn from their friend Damon down the street or something, and they're watching porn over there, and you're right, they become overly sexual and they don't really know what it is. And it's just teaching them sex. It's not really teaching them about condoms, not teaching them about the things that they can get from sex and stuff like that. And I think that's important conversation to have, you know, as a parent. It's just finding the right way to do so, like you said. So it's like, we're not saying we want you to go out there and do it. We're saying that these things happen. And here's what happens to the body. You know what I mean?
I think that's so important. And that's such a sticky situation for so many people. And I totally agree, right? You're like, I don't want them to think that I'm suggesting that they do this, right? And I have nieces and nephews that span the ages of 4 to 18. And I was a very young aunt for these like two older, you know, they're like 10, 15 years younger than me. And just having a conversation with them and being able to tell them that like, this is something that they don't have to do, right? Because same thing, they go down to the street and their one friend is having sex, but they're not ready to, but then they feel pressured. You can bring the conversation, that piece into the conversation. Like, don't do this till you're ready. Have your like, people are trying to like rejigger how we talk about like virginity and be like, when is your like sexual debut? Because I remember being pressured as a teen girl to like do other things that I wasn't comfortable with, and like I didn't even have the language to say no necessarily, because no felt really scary, or like you didn't want to like be like, oh no. So you're like, oh, I'm not ready for this. Like, this is not something I want to do yet. Like, I'm just kind of like you finding and presenting, even when you are doing the education and having conversations with your children, that this is a not have to. And it doesn't have to be a scary thing. You can be like, okay, hey, like, this is what an STI is. And when you're ready, we can talk about this. Like, I just want you to know now, this could be something that we talk about when it's right for you in 5 years. Like, give them a big barrier to entry. Like, tell them you just have to make them feel loved and seen and understood. You know, my niece, talks about it all the time. She's like, I'm not ready. I'm like, great. You'll know when you are. Good.
Yeah. You will know when you are, because everybody makes that decision for themselves. And you know, it's so crazy that it was used back in the day as a scare tactic to scare kids, like to talk about all the different things you can catch from sex. That's mainly what they kind of talked about, to scare you from doing it. It's more of a scare tactic. And like you said, it doesn't have to be something that's shameful or scary. It could be more so of awareness. It's making them aware. I always tell people that my mother didn't scare me with the world and other things that happens in the world or happened to you as a child. She mainly made me more aware of things. So it didn't make me fearful. It just made me aware. And I think awareness is so important when it comes to just life and raising kids, period.
Yeah, that's a toolkit, right? Like, especially for young women, I feel like that gives them, you know, a leg up. Like, I wish I would have had more ability to see the situation for what it was till I found myself too late in it, right? Where I'm like, oh, I'm like with this boy and I'm feeling pressured to do this thing. And I would have been like, oh, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't go to this 22-year-old boy's house when I'm 17. Like, hello. Yeah. And I didn't, you know, I didn't know, or I didn't have the resources. And so, you know, it's another piece to find friends and community that will support your children, you, and having these conversations and creating more awareness that like, that's really the piece. Like, you don't know anybody anything, especially young women.
Yeah. And it's so crazy because we live in a digital world. So you can find almost everything you want on the internet, right? Totally. Everything is at your fingertips, but there's a lot of misinformation too. You know, especially I think when it comes to like yeast infection, because I think, remember back in the day, it was like, oh, you got a yeast infection, you must be wearing dirty underwear. You know, that kind of stuff is what people think. What are some of the myths around it, and what are some of the truths about it?
Oh my gosh.
When it comes to it.
Great question. I will like take what you said. Like, you are not, first of all, you are not dirty if you have any of those things. That's such a like ridiculous word. So just starting with yeast infections, like our bodies are made up of all these like interesting microbiomes. They all have their own like balances and counterbalances, and like our vaginas, and like to clarify too for people, your vagina is the canal. It's actually everything inside of your body. Your vulva is the exterior. That's your labia minora, majora, clitoris, etc. So your vaginal canal has a microbiome, and it's very sensitive, and lots of things can change the balance of your vaginal microbiome. Things like, say, some people get yeast infections during their periods because the like pH balance of your blood is different than the pH balance of your vagina, and it can cause itching and irritation and all those things. You know, say like BV yeast infections, that things change, and that those things can happen. Wet, damp clothing. You're in a swimsuit. Like, I did a ton of yoga, which is arguably like a healthy thing. And it became a trigger for me because like I lived in New York City, and like I couldn't go home on the subway in like soaking wet yoga clothes, things like that. So like change out of those types of things, like clothes, like get a probiotic. Our gut microbiome is connected to our vaginal microbiome, and we're doing so many things daily, whether it's medication we're taking, like a yeast infection can be a comorbidity to say like diabetes medication because or other antibiotics and things like that. So like those are other health upkeep pieces that then can affect your vagina. Like there's just so many pieces. Introduction of like, I think about this a lot, lube, right? First time I got lube from Planned Parenthood, it was like mint chocolate chip flavored. And I was like, which is ridiculous. Your vagina should taste like a vagina. And it has like sugar in it. A sugar will cause candida overgrowth. They feed on it. So, you know, I tell people to like kind of look inward and think about and journal, like, if you are someone who's getting recurrent yeast infections or bacterial vaginosis, what are your triggers? You know, like mine is alcohol sometimes now. I just have a sensitive system because of sugar. And then have a toolkit to address those things, right? Like our suppository or our salve, anytime I feel itching and irritation now, I'm able to use these products and it doesn't get to be a full blown infection. You know, and then, sorry, that's kind of long-winded, but, and then the truth about these things is that they're really common, right? Yeah. So 1 in 3 people have bacterial vaginosis. You know, 60 to 70% of people get a yeast infection of their life. 40 to 50% of those people will have them recurrently, which means 4 to 5 times a year. Like UTIs, incredibly common. And so even though you feel alone and you might be embarrassed, just know that like nearly everybody deals with this at one point or another, one of those things. And that's I think my best truth takeaway, at least. And that it can be dealt with. It can be dealt with in a way that like is easy and comforting, right? It can like excuse me, sorry, do you hear the dog?
My dog is upstairs. I had to crate him. I'm like, oh God, I hope he doesn't start barking either. Wow, sorry, that was so loud. That's okay. Scare the crap out of me. I know. At first, I thought it was my dog. I was like, oh my God, is he barking upstairs?
No, they've been sleeping. Just like woke out of a slumber next to me. She's deaf. Oh my God. Like, who knows what woke her up? She can't even hear. Anyways, sorry about that. I don't even know what I was saying now.
It's okay. You know, I think based off what you said, it's something that is key is that it's common. It happens to a lot of us. You're not by yourself. It can happen to any of us. To get a yeast infection, UTI, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It's just a common thing that happens, especially like you said, when you take antibiotics and certain things, they give you UTI, they give you yeast infections. You're like, why did you give me something that's going to give me a yeast infection?
Yeah. That's the part that they're like, get rid of this, but now your vagina is going to feel like it's on fire.
Exactly. Like, Jesus Christ. And so, did you always think you were going to be an entrepreneur? And with that question, be an entrepreneur in the vaginal health world at that.
No.
You know, to me, I feel like there's so much science that goes into it. And you come from being a photographer, a creative. It's like, did you have to learn more about the science piece of it? Although your partner's in biology, he has a background in biology. It's like, did you have to learn more about the science of it all?
Totally. Well, like, I know. Well, I'll just say flat out, no, I never thought my whole life's work was going to be putting my own vagina on blast and talking about yeast infections for the rest of my life. So no, but it did give me a place for my politics. Our company is inherently very political. We do a ton of advocacy work, sex education, in, you know, the LGBTQ space. Like, again, we talk about like the roots of sexual health and our understanding of like, you know, the social, cultural things that got us here. So sex work, you know, race, gender, all of these things, like history of gynecology is really fucked up. Yeah. And so I love it for that, but I didn't think it was going to be my life's work. In terms of having to educate myself beforehand, totally. And that's still a work in progress. Like, quite frankly, as much as I've been doing this for 5 or 6 years, now we hire incredible pharmacologists, naturopaths, gynecologists to help support in the making, obviously, of our products and all of those things. But early days, yeah, like the salve, which is our, still our hero product. It was the first product we created that I needed. I was like, what is it that I need? And so we, myself and Taylor, my business partner, like went and sat in Powell's Books. To anybody who's familiar with Portland, it's this like huge superstore. And we were just like, we were reading everything we could, everything about alternative medicine, everything that I could, what could I do? And so I began to formulate really strong opinions, especially testing them on myself about what I wanted, right? I was like, people suffer so often from like micro tearing, be it from penetrative sex or even from tampons or sometimes athletics. And that micro tearing can make you more susceptible to infection. So I'm like, why aren't we putting something in our product to address the topical healing? So we added echinacea to our product. I was like, I want one thing that soothes and cools like an inflamed vulva, like if and again, this could be after sex, from clothing, exercise, during your period, because of a yeast infection. So we're like, okay, we want some tea tree, which like, again, you apply it and it's so wonderful because you can like feel it working, if you will, which it is, because it's also one of the ingredients that has our actives, berberine, that's clinically trialed against yeast infections. And so we made these like super products through a series of, 2 years of research. And then of course affirmed them through like the naturopaths, pharmacologists and stuff that we were working, who ended up, who now produce our products for us. So ton of education, which I do enjoy. I was like kind of a witchy kid and like loved, plants and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting journey, but I love what I do. I do love learning now in this format, because I've seen what a wonderful benefit it's had on the community we serve. Like, we, not to like toot our own horn, but like we get emails weekly that are like, this changed my life. And like, it's all worth it for that. Cause I was there. I was that person.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to order some products because, that happens. I want to be able to have something on hand, So.
Oh my gosh, honey, I can't believe we didn't get them out to you ahead of this. Yeah, no, we'll get a whole package. So you can give your real review. It'll be a good follow-up to this, right? Like,
it will be. Right. It will be. It's so funny. You talked about vulva and vagina and how they're different. Because for most of us that are not really into this space, we're thinking, it's the whole thing is just a vagina. You know what I mean? But I didn't know there was actually a difference. At first I was like, maybe the vulva is just vagina, but it's just vulva instead. So they're two different things.
Yeah, your vulva's it's all your external, like part of your external genitalia outside of your vagina, vaginal opening, vaginal canal. Like your urethra, is outside of your urethral opening is outside of your body. Like it's not on the inside. So yeah, the vagina is inside, which I should like come with a little anatomy piece. Yeah. And isn't that like such proof? Like a lot of people don't know that.
No, I had no idea. I had no idea. So, but now I know, and now I can tell other people too. Yeah. I know that because I had no idea. What has been some of the challenges you think with starting a vaginal health business? Yeah. Just be an entrepreneur too, because I know it's not easy.
Oh my gosh, I know. I mean, like, you run a podcast, right? You're like doing you're like, I do the marketing, I do the
oh my God.
I do, you become really multifaceted, which is amazing. I mean, what we do is inherently charged subject matter, right? So like us trying to create ads and us trying to get our products out into the world is often seen as like, we're peddling sex or something. And it's like, this is just sexual health. This is common knowledge. Like people, even when we reach out to like stockists, like wholesalers, like, hey, like we love your shop. Like you should carry us. We get responses sometimes that are like, I have a 15-year-old child. This is so inappropriate. I'm like, ooh, red flag. This is like very for you. But, so it's hard to advertise, right? That's just like censorship is huge. Like we can't say vagina on the internet, right? Like if we want to advertise on Meta which is like Facebook, Instagram. And then it's interesting because, and this is pretty nuanced, but, we're creating homeopathic alternatives to very mainstream medications. And that is that's inherently a little bit like spicy for people. They're like, no, you're making like, I don't want like plant woo-woo magic on my vagina. Like I need something that works. But this stuff does work. Like the ingredients in it are clinically trialed to address the issues that we take, like BV, yeast infections, etc. Or if now we make claims, right? So we just launched like a homeopathic medicine, which is it's basically a natural medicine, but we can make claims about it. And that's huge for us because we can tell people that this product clinically does the thing it does. And that's been really challenging. That's been like a 6-year process. Before, the way we would make claims and talk about our products had to be very generic. And I think that's something that people in the natural space really struggle with. And I just encourage people to understand that like plants are incredibly powerful. There are so many that like you go into the forest, you eat it, you are going to die. Like, the medicinal products of plants have been around for thousands and thousands of years. Like we're working with doctors of Chinese medicine that have been using these herbs to treat yeast infections for thousands of years. So, that's hard. We really want people to have access to these products in a mainstream way as just an alternative, but the mainstream definitely pushes back. So it's going to be a kind of an uphill journey, but that's okay. We're here for it.
You know what's so
spicy?
I know. I keep it spicy. You know what's so funny about that is you think about music and how sexually charged music is and how it gets pushed and it gets advertised. I mean, they actually say all the words. You know what I mean? They say everything on the internet, on TV, on the radio, everything. And then, but to block ads when it has to more so to do with health, has more health basis versus, hey, just go have sex. That's not what it's saying. It's talking about sexual health. You know what I mean? It's talking about vagina health. It's not talking about anything else. And I just find that to be so weird that if we can promote all those songs that have all that stuff and all that, all the stuff we listen to, that these kids listen to today, I don't understand why we can't see an ad for vaginal health. It's just weird.
I don't understand either, frankly. I mean, there are things, sure, that I get. It's like they want to make sure, because there's a lot of people that are like peddling, snake oil, if you will, on the internet that says their product does something and it doesn't do that. And people are skeptical, and I get it. So we're working to find those ways and to like lift the veil of like natural products. It's like we tell people sometimes, I'm like, we're like the Burt's Bees of vaginal health stuff, right? Like, we try to like make it a little bit more gentle and sometimes that's helpful, but it really doesn't make sense. It's out there. Like we said at the beginning of this conversation, like the information is there on the internet and like
it's always been,
and it's also not always right. It's like the misinformation is very present, and so we do a ton of work to also address that. Like we do extensive blog work, and create educational resources that are written from first person perspectives, and from professionals. So like we'll have our gynecologists write blogs on how to prepare for the gynecologist, things like that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, if you can touch on some of the history of gynecology and how it was like, I guess, detrimental to women at first. Like I didn't know that really.
I mean, this like actually we have a great blog that I'll pass to you so you can look at it. It just, we didn't start studying the vulva till like way later. And, then we started studying like the penis. We also, for a long time, women were not required to be in clinical studies. So we were making claims and creating education around like, trials that didn't necessarily include women, this is hundreds of years ago, but like not even, I think it's like early, like 1920s, 1950s, this was still a thing. Like who people consider the like father of gynecology was testing his methods and ideology on Black enslaved women. And it like obviously that is inherently, excuse my language, like effed up, incredibly problematic. And like that led to, kind of the way that we talk about and treat our bodies. All of that plays into this. And like the hypersexualization of our bodies throughout the years, and how, like you said, women were seen as like loose or dirty if they did have an STI, and all of those things, they still play into how we experience like the world, right? Like our doctors are still perpetuating stigma if we're going in and asking for multiple STI tests, or if we're of a certain age and like, you know, something is wrong, they jump to conclusions. It's just, there's not like a lot of bedside manner, but it's, it's just unfortunate. Actually, I don't know if you've heard this one. This one's pretty crazy. Like, one of the first vibrators, and when vibrators were popularized, it's because they were treating women who were considered hysterical. And so they were giving them vibrators and like basically getting them off to calm them down, which I think is like so funny. But it was like, it was wildly offensive at the time, and not, useful.
It's so funny you brought that up, because I was going to bring that up. And I think the show was, I was watching the show, and it was called Master of Sex or something. But and that when they talked about the first vibrators, and because the women, they felt they were hysterical, right? It was their definition of it. They really wasn't. They were just probably just women that was overwhelmed. And they used the vibrators to, because they didn't know anything about the woman's vagina. They were just trying to use this vibrator to learn about the woman's vagina, and to get them to come, once they actually come and stuff like that, and be able to feel relieved and feel better. But it was so funny you mentioned that, because I was going to mention that to you about, that time of, watching that show and them learning about the woman's vagina, because men didn't really know about women's vaginas at that time.
No, not at all. Yeah. And actually, I was looking to fact check what I was saying. I was like, it's probably like the 50s or something. It actually wasn't until 1993 that Congress finally mandated that women and minorities be included in clinical research and trials. Like 1993. Yeah. And so like now, obviously, like,
I cannot believe that.
That was not very long ago.
That wasn't that long ago. I graduated from high school in 1993.
Yeah, that is wild.
That is, oh my God. Are you serious?
Yeah.
And wow. So that says a lot about our country, and how far we still have to go. Like you said, still far we have to go, which is being comfortable about talking about vaginal health. And I can't believe that. I saw something on your Instagram page that says the word vajayjay makes you cringe. Like, either you don't want to that word. What's wrong with vajayjay? A lot of us use that word. It's cute.
Well, okay. So, and actually, it's funny. Our social media person put that up, and there was actually some really good conversations going on about that. And I stand by a lot of the feedback that people like, this is what makes it light and bright for me, and like allows me to talk about it. And so for me, I think it's because like when I feel that way, I'm like, oh my God, like I think if I had to say vajayjay 1,000 times a day, I would be upset, right? I'm like, this is something I work in all day long, every single day, that using the anatomical words, like I think allow it to be a lot more accessible to me. Whereas like if I'm like on a podcast and I'm like, your hoo-hoo gets infected or your vajayjay gets infected, I would feel stupid. Like that's me. But I say that now with like, if you have words that affirm you, and you can use vajayjay to talk about your body, your partner, use it. I don't care. I think whatever word makes you feel good and confident, use that. But like with the understanding that like, obviously that's not going to be the same for everybody. And like, just, I think originally, because it was like, there was so much shame that I was associating with like these products that were telling me to like refresh my hoo-ha. And I was just like, like I can't refresh do that I'm like, I don't want, my hoo-ha doesn't need refreshing. And I'm like, my vagina I just need to take a probiotic, And so that's that. But I appreciate that as a question. And like, that's a big part of who we are, is like understanding that feedback. You're like, why does it make you cringe? And it's like, okay, well, this is for me. And so we always try to have really good conversations with our community to make sure everybody's opinions and voices are heard, because for sexual health, it's so many different experiences, right? Like what feels good to me is so different than to you. Like, and cheers to the people who want to use vajayjay or pussy or there's some ones out there I don't love, like fur burger. I mean, I could go on, the like euphemism.
Fur burger.
that we've heard. I'm sorry, I even just said that on the internet out loud.
It's okay. Listen, we can say whatever we want on this podcast.
I know. It's so
Either you like it or you don't like it. That's okay.
There are some I do have. Well, maybe the ones that feel more derogatory. JJ doesn't feel derogatory. But again, I think it's more important to find what affirms you. And if
it's so funny. We talk about the words because I do a show with two other co-hosts called You're Not Invited, and we do talk about trending news on social media and stuff like that.
Cute.
And I brought up a song that two people made, and the song was called Coochie. And I kept saying the word to one of my co-hosts, and she kept saying, "Oh God, why are you saying that word?" And I'm like, "Well, that's the name of the song." But she was highly offended by the word coochie. Yeah. And I don't know. I told her, I don't really know if I'm offended by it or not. I'm just like, it's just something people say. You know what I mean? I say it's coochie. We said pussy, vagina, whatever. We said the JJ. It's really up to you. Yeah. But it's so funny how certain words, people get so offended by it because every time I said it, she cringed. And I'm like, girl, what is wrong with you? It's okay. Yeah.
Well, and maybe that's like a deeper, maybe that's a more deep rooted relationship to I'm embarrassed. Stop saying that. And it's like, look, here's my new off the cuff rule. If you want to call your vagina a JJ, you just also better be able to say the JJ. Are you masking? Are you masking your body parts and is it like a veil because of shame? You're using these words. Yeah. Like, ew, my vagina, but my vajayjay is cool. I find a lot of parents do it with their kids, and they're like, your special spot, or your, it's
your poo poo.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And let's just not mask it. If you can say vajayjay, you should be able to say vagina. If you want to call it your, sparkle princess, whatever, that's cool too. But I bet it's maybe some I don't bet, that's not fair, but internalized shame, right? You're just like, I'm embarrassed. Yeah, when
gross. It's like, okay. And like I said, you hear this word even worse in songs. So it's like, coochie shouldn't be that big of a deal, but you're right. Maybe it's something connected to the word that makes her feel like, ooh,
totally.
It's a dirty word. So I get
that's really common. And I think people if you feel discomfort, people listening with those words, that's okay. It's common. And just maybe you think about how you unpack that, right? Maybe use that word once more in passing or something. This is inherently hard and super personal stuff.
Overall, the conversation on your vaginal health is very sensitive, and it's a very private conversation that a lot of people don't want to have publicly or it's hard to have that conversation even with your spouse, like my husband, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't think we've ever had that conversation before about, hey, this is what's happening. Those kind of things you kind of keep private, and you'll talk to your girlfriends and you'll talk to your gynecologist about. But is it important to have that conversation with your partner to make them aware? Or is it more so it's on a need to know basis?
I think it's a personal preference. I think I think you should absolutely be able to talk to your partner about it. That is very important. It's your health. It's the person you choose to spend your life with. It's someone you trust. So if, I don't know if you have children, but when you're having a child, right? Your body changes and those things are happening, and you want to be able to talk to your partner with it. And you're making a human, and it's kind of gnarly. Right. And so you want to be able to tell them what's up, or find solace and comfort in them. So I think just having access to that is super important. Do you have to talk to them about how your vagina is feeling every morning? Absolutely not. I actually still consider myself, aside that this is what I do. I don't like my partner to even watch me shave my legs in the shower. There's some things that are just for me, and that's totally okay too. But you should be able to be I'm not feeling well, I can't have sex right now, or whether you're on your period or whatever it may be, it just should be accessible. But you don't have to. I think going into having children and talking about how you're going to create education and conversations around these people end up being very important, right? Like you want to agree on those things. So there's an aspect there, but like it doesn't have to be dinner table conversation for everybody, but it should be accessible. It shouldn't feel so shameful.
Yeah, that's true. I just know with my husband, he won't even buy my feminine products for me. He's like super embarrassed to even go to the store to even pick those up. So I know having that conversation with him it'll be a little tough for me. It'll be like, painful.
You should test him. You should be like, look, go get these.
I'm gonna see what he says. I'm gonna see what he does. Be like, he's definitely one of those. He's one of those, I don't want to hear you pee, close the door type of guys. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's that kind of guy.
and I will say, like, bathroom conversations to me also feel different. Like, there's some things that, like, I do want to maintain privacy around. Like, you know, I don't find comfort in bathroom talk. I don't need that. I don't need support from that partner, but I also travel a lot. And like, you know, if you get sick sometimes, and there's not a lot you can do about that. You know, if you've ever been in, you know, like had some weird street food, there's things that happen, and this is like, always, you know, like that's part of life. But, you know, I do think, you know, think about it. It's like someone you're having sex with, like your partner has a relationship with your sexual health and like your vagina, right? Like, I don't know. It just maybe would be a fun experiment.
You know what? I'm gonna try
it once. Like, and maybe
see
look,
what he says.
This is an experiment, and we are not gonna. You don't have to do this all the time. I just want you to do it for me one time.
One time,
so I know you could.
Does. So, that's it. Just so I know you can. Like, I know it's something you can actually do. That'd be helpful.
What if I'm sick and I need these things? He would do it, you know?
Yeah. He would. If I'm sick, he'll definitely do it. He would have no other choice, okay? Because he's gonna take care of me and the kids too.
Yeah.
So what are some of the main? How many products do you have with your line? Is it 4? Like, how many products are there?
Yeah, so right now, I think we've got about 7. I'm actually going to look. Yeah, so we've got a salve, a topical salve that you can apply to your vulva. Again, great for itching, inflammation, preventing yeast infections, managing symptoms of BV. We have a UTI supplement. It's like a super supplement. It's really cool. It's demonose and cranberry and uva ursi and all these other herbs that people have been trialing because a lot of UTI, there's a lot of like resistant or what causes UTIs, they thought they like totally knew it was always E. coli, but it's not. There's all these other things. So we're really trying to address that. We have a suppository, which you use intravaginally. And this is a product that will prevent or heal acute yeast infections as well. A probiotic. Probiotic is a game changer for people who have bacterial vaginosis. Maintaining that vaginal flora is really important. We have this product. It's like a spot treatment tonic. If people are familiar with like fur oil, I use it post shave, post wax. It's very similar in terms of ingredients, is that it's naturally antimicrobial and antifungal. We have a hydrosol that's super beautiful. This is something like I throw in the gym bag. Again, like I was like, if you don't have time, it's like for a shower, post yoga, post workout, and you're somebody who has a sensitive system. It's a really, really beautiful, like water-based product. So you don't have to leave the gym feeling like oily necessarily. Yeah. And then a really nice body oil. It's just kind of a luxurious massage oil, something nice for yourself.
So are the majority of the products you can use daily?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the probiotics you can do daily.
UTI supplement can be used daily. So if you're someone who gets chronic UTIs, you can take 2 a day. But then what's nice is these products are pretty versatile. So like you have the same UTI product for then if it's an acute infection. So then you like quadruple your intake and you take 8 of the UTI pills. If like, the maintenance didn't
happens.
If the maintenance didn't keep up or you did something that maybe triggered a full blown infection or something like that. Like, but yeah, like I use the salve daily. Like I'm somebody now that is pretty sensitive to penetrative sex. So like every time, like, I'll like go take a shower and like apply this to like my vulva. It's very cooling. Again, super good for maintaining the quality of tissue as well. So we address a lot of like menopausal, premenopausal people who deal with vaginal atrophy as well, and itching and dryness. So these are great maintenance products for that as well.
Oh, that's really good to talk about the menopause, because I'm in that age range.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm definitely in that age range. I'm 48. So I'm in that age range. And so I will definitely like to get some of those products, because it's a part of my life that's going. It hasn't happened yet, but I know I'm there. Yeah. It can happen at any moment. And just being able to have more knowledge around menopause and all that kind of stuff is going to be great as well. But knowing that there's products out there that can help. Yeah. Because I know a lot of women suffer through menopause too.
Totally. You know? It's another one of those like big silent things that people don't talk about. Yeah. I think, I mean, I think the tissue quality and maintaining tissue quality, like for your vulva, like is so important going through menopause, because you're just like, your skin is more delicate, you know, it's which is going to be more likely to tear, which is going to be more likely to cause infections. And so I think, like the salve is such a great daily product. It's, you know, and this is also maybe TMI, but like self-massage through menopause, whether that's masturbation or just like, again, applying a salve with your fingertips to your vulva, is really, really good for you, because it stimulates fresh oxygenated blood to the surface, which also, you know, in combination with the products, is going to help increase tissue quality and provide more comfort, you know, if you are having sex with your partner, you know, even after the fact as well. So highly recommend that. Okay. And that's then again, if for like internal vaginal discomfort, we always offer up the suppository, and you can just, you know, it's a tiny little, you know, basically like organic ovule pill, and you can you can put it up your vaginal canal the same you would any other suppository, and just put on like a comfy pair of panties and like sleep with it in overnight, and it'll like very much mitigate symptoms of itching, irritation. Again, a great product for menopause as well. Okay, and just vaginal dryness really in general. Yeah.
That's really good to know, because menopause is like a huge subject. You know what I mean? That, like I said, a lot of women go through stuff. I've seen my mom suffer through menopause. And so I myself has just been learning a lot more about it, because like I said, I'm in that age range and I know it's going to happen eventually. And so I want to be aware, I want to be knowledgeable, and I want to know what's out there in order for me to combat whatever things I'm going to be dealing with during that time. So that's good to know.
Arm yourself with education, right? Like you don't have to be this like person who wants to talk about sex all the time, or vaginas or whatever, but like just understanding ahead of time, and so you don't find yourself in like, you know, a situation well then you're like, oh shit, what do I do? I think it's good.
Yeah, it's always good. So we're gonna bring the show to a closing, but how do you know when your vagina is happy? You know, I see that, but how do you know when you have a happy vagina?
This is my favorite question, actually, because people are like, oh God, I don't know. Do I need this? And I was like, the way I feel the best is when I don't feel my vagina, right? Like, like when it's not bothered, right? It's not itchy. It's not irritated. It's not inflamed. Like I haven't been wearing like 1980s Wranglers that are way too tight or something like that, with like cheap, like lingerie that like doesn't fit or something. Like, you know, like I think a happy vagina is a vagina you don't feel. And that doesn't mean like, obviously, like when you're aroused or something, you feel great things, but like discomfort, right? I just want to like go about my day and not have to think about the discomfort of my vulva or the discomfort of my vagina. That's what happy vagina means to me.
Good. One that you don't feel.
Unless it's in a good way.
Unless it's in a good way, but not the bad way, the good way. Totally. Well, I really do appreciate you, Lindsay, for being on the show. And before we end the show, is a question I ask all my guests is, what is some of the best advice you received from another woman?
The best advice I received from another woman is don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. I would have never started this company if I had to have everything figured out before I launched. Like, we are all constantly evolving, and like I say this all the time, you never arrive. Like, life is just a series of progress and events. And so, like, you know, as an entrepreneur and somebody who like is constantly making and doing different things, like you just have to try and put yourself out there, and it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. That's how you learn and how you grow. And so,
Yeah, I like that. That was really good. Don't let perfection be the enemy of progress, right?
Yeah.
That's what it was. I like it. That's awesome. A really good one. I think people are going to resonate with that.
Good.
Well, again, I thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a great conversation all about our vaginal health and sexual health. So this is going to be a good show. I am Shawnee Sanders. This is the Girl Techno Podcast, and we will see you guys next time.